All right, Todd, you got the results?
Yeah, and they're very, very interesting.
And what we see here is embedded bones on the wall.
Buried in a dark Guatemalan temple, the Mayan Death Wall hid its secrets for ages. Its red paint, carved skulls, and odd glyphs puzzled everyone until 2025. A team decoded its ancient words, revealing a prophecy of a blood-red moon and a world-changing event.
This has happened in the past, and I believe the Mayans were saying to us, this is happening again.
The Maya knew something we didn't. As the jungle whispers and the skies align, this wall isn't just history. It's a warning, etched in stone, begging us to listen before it's too late. Chilling mystery of Mayan Death Wall. Deep in the Guatemalan jungle, far from the usual tourist paths and modern noise, lies something both fascinating and eerie, something archaeologists now call the Mayan Death Wall. Hidden under a 30-meter-tall pyramid in the remote Petén Basin, this underground chamber stayed sealed for over 2,000 years, untouched since the pre-classic Maya period. When it was finally opened during an excavation in 2005 by archaeologist William Saturno and his team at San Bartolo, no one expected to find what was waiting behind those ancient stone walls. This wasn't just another temple room or burial site. It was something far more mysterious. The walls were painted with a strange red color made from blood-red ochre, giving the chamber an unsettling feel. Covering one entire side was a massive mural, stretching about 12 feet wide and 8 feet tall. It showed skeletal figures holding sharp obsidian blades, with bones exposed and hands clutching human hearts. Above them was a black sun surrounded by swirling spiral shapes, possibly symbols of comets or the passage of time. Large serpents appeared to be eating stars or planets. And across the surface, more than 200 glyphs were carefully carved in neat rows. It was unlike anything seen in other Maya art.
Here inside the mural room where we've just finished the last 3 years of conservation work.
While murals in places like Bonampak tell vivid stories of battles or ceremonies, and sites like Palenque focus on creation myths and the gods, the Death Wall felt darker. It seemed to speak of violence, death, and perhaps even some kind of ancient warning. Early archaeologists couldn't shake the feeling that this was no ordinary painting. It felt like a message from the past meant to stay hidden. Some believed it marked a tomb. Others thought it was a record of human sacrifice.
Wait, leave it out for just a minute.
A bunch of fallen stones. There's
another side stone there.
There's a full body. They smushed him in there.
Getting to the chamber wasn't easy. The path led through a long, narrow tunnel built using a corbel arch system, a style that creates a pointed ceiling with stacked stones. This added to the secrecy of the place. It felt like this room was meant for very few to see. Nearby, the team found other clues: beads made of jade, broken obsidian knives, and burned bones. These remains seemed to confirm their suspicions. This was a place of rituals, possibly bloody ones. To make things more interesting, the temple is located 13 miles from the city of Uaxactun, adding to its isolation. For years, no one knew how it fit into the larger Maya world. That changed in 2023, when advanced LiDAR scans, technology that uses lasers to map hidden structures, revealed a network of ancient roads and buildings around the pyramid. It turns out this was no lonely monument. It was part of a ceremonial center connected to other parts of the region through carefully built causeways. This meant the site may have played a much bigger role than previously thought, possibly as a major religious or political center. Still, the biggest mystery remained. What was the purpose of the Death Wall? Was it honoring dead kings? Was it connected to Xibalba, the Maya underworld? Or was it something else entirely? A prophecy, perhaps? For years, no one could read the glyphs. Their meaning was buried, just like the room itself. But that may be changing. Recent progress in deciphering ancient Maya writing has started to reveal bits and pieces of the message hidden in those glyphs.
Very lush, and I think very striking environment to move through. Things like palaces and temple pyramids. All of those would have been covered in
symbols no one could read. The Maya were brilliant thinkers and artists, and their writing system was one of the most advanced in the ancient world. They created over 800 symbols, known as glyphs, to write down their stories, calendars, and religious beliefs. Some symbols stood for whole words, while others represented sounds. It was a clever and complex system. But by the time the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, much of that knowledge was at risk of being erased. Spanish missionaries, especially a man named Diego de Landa, tried to wipe out Maya beliefs.
Burnt their books. They had wonderful books made of deerskin and tree bark that they used to write down their local myths.
He burned nearly all of their sacred books, thinking they were works of the devil. Only 3 survived: the Dresden, Madrid, and Paris codices. These fragile books, made from bark paper, were written between the years 1000 and 1200 AD. They contain valuable information about the Maya calendar, astronomy, and rituals. Still, for centuries, no one could read most of the glyphs.
Back into a noun, so it's better to say hieroglyphs for the noun and hieroglyphic for the adjective.
Then came experts like Tatiana Proskoryakov in the 1960s and Yuri Knorozov in the 1950s. Knorozov, a Soviet linguist, figured out that the Maya writing system used both sounds and symbols, a big breakthrough. Proskoryakov later helped translate historical texts carved on stone monuments. Thanks to their work, we can now understand many classic-era texts. But the glyphs on the Death Wall were a different story. These symbols were much older, more than 1,000 years older than the codices. The Death Wall was painted sometime between 800 and 200 BC, in what's called the pre-classic period. It included over 200 glyphs, many of which had never been seen before. Some were familiar.
There were 3 primary calendars that were critically important to them. That would be the long count calendar, which kept up with the number of years in a particular period of time.
Like the day signs from the Tzolk'in calendar, symbols for deer and jaguar. But others were strange and haunting, swirling shapes, skeletal figures, and cosmic patterns, unlike anything found in later Maya writing. Experts noticed that these early glyphs didn't have the same clear sound-based patterns seen in classic texts. Knorozov believed that pre-classic symbols were more symbolic and less phonetic, which made them much harder to decode. The glyphs on the Death Wall were also painted in dramatic red and black colors, adding to their mysterious and intense appearance. Some scholars guessed that the wall might tell an old myth, maybe something from the Popol Vuh, the Maya creation story, which includes terrifying journeys through the underworld. Others thought it might describe a rare event in the sky, like an eclipse, or the appearance of a new star. When archaeologists found similar mural fragments at nearby San Bartolo dating back 300 BC, they got excited. Those fragments showed early calendar notations, proving that the Maya were already tracking time very precisely.
He uses his upper hand to manipulate. And now you see his lower hand, he manipulates some controls. He's sitting on a kind of chair in a sort of capsule.
A Mayan king in a rocket ship.
Breakthrough that opened the wall's secrets. For decades, the mysterious symbols on the Mayan Death Wall left experts scratching their heads. The glyphs were older than most Maya writings and filled with strange spirals, skeletons, and unknown patterns. No one could quite figure out what they meant until 2025, when everything changed. That year, a major breakthrough came from a team led by David Stewart, one of the world's top experts in Maya writing. Stewart, along with his team of researchers, decided to do something new. They used a combination of old knowledge and modern technology to try and decode the wall's strange writing. Building on the work of Yuri Norizov, who had helped crack the Maya writing system decades earlier, they added something different this time: artificial intelligence. The team trained AI using the 3 surviving Maya codices, especially the Dresden Codex. This ancient book included detailed astronomical tables and rituals. They also added data from mural fragments found at Zultun, another ancient Maya site. By comparing patterns and repeating symbols across these sources, the AI was able to spot similarities and begin translating parts of the Death Wall's text.
Their main deity was Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan, Kukumats, all those different names for the exact same deity, which was described to be a winged or a flying serpent.
The result? They managed to decode about 60% of the wall's glyphs. A huge leap forward. One section caught everyone's attention. A group of 12 glyphs described something called the red eclipse. Experts believe this refers to a blood moon, which is a total lunar eclipse that looks red because of how the Earth's atmosphere bends sunlight. Another line talked about the turning of the bones, which seemed to hint at a sacred ritual or a moment of cosmic reset. These were not random drawings, they were telling a story about the sky. The AI even spotted that the wall's messages matched details in the Dresden Codex's eclipse tables, tables that correctly predicted solar eclipses for decades. That level of accuracy shocked researchers, especially since the Death Wall was built in the pre-classic period, hundreds of years earlier. Stewart's team went even further. Using radiocarbon testing on the wall's plaster, they dated it to around 100 BC. Then, based on the glyphs, they matched a specific date from the Maya long count calendar to a modern event. According to NASA, a total lunar eclipse would be visible in Guatemala in 2025, exactly what the glyphs predicted. There was more. The wall also mentioned the serpent's coil, which experts believe might be a comet or maybe the alignment of planets. Either way, it showed that these early Maya weren't just storytellers, they were astronomers. They tracked the skies, predicted eclipses, and carved their warnings into stone, hoping that future generations would one day understand. Thanks to this breakthrough, we now know that the Mayan Death Wall wasn't just art. It was a message.
We still do not know why they left their cities, because of a sudden they disappeared. And it was not a war.
What the wall actually says. Thanks to recent decoding efforts, we now have a clearer understanding of what the Mayan Death Wall actually says, and it's both fascinating and eerie. The message carved into that ancient plaster is more than just a piece of art or mythology. It appears to be a warning. At the heart of the message is an event the glyphs call the blood eclipse. This describes a total lunar eclipse when the moon turns a reddish color as it passes through Earth's shadow. The glyphs paint a vivid picture. They say the moon will bleed in the serpent's jaws, suggesting that this eclipse was seen as part of a larger cosmic drama. But the message goes deeper. The wall links this eclipse with the end of a major cycle in the Maya long count calendar, the 13th Baktun. In Maya belief, these calendar endings often symbolized major changes or resets. The glyphs refer to this as the turning of the bones, a haunting phrase that experts think could mean either a time of mass death or a deep transformation in society.
For the Mayas, the structure of the world. We are living in the living plane that it's the earth, and then there's the skies with different levels, and of course the underworld.
In ancient Maya culture, bones were often linked to ancestors and the cycle of life and death. So this phrase could mean both destruction and rebirth. The wall also describes large rituals that took place during this time, involving heart offerings, most likely referring to human sacrifices made to please powerful gods. Two gods are mentioned by name: Kinich Ahau, the sun god, and Ixchel, the moon goddess. These deities were believed to control vital parts of life, like sunlight, rain, and fertility. Sacrifices were likely made in hopes of avoiding disaster. The glyphs even predict a great drought following the eclipse. This lines up with warnings found in the Dresden Codex, another ancient Maya text, which also links eclipses to failed crops and famine. In a time when farming meant survival, such events would have been terrifying. Interestingly, the wall also mentions something called the sky serpent. Many experts think this refers to a comet, possibly comet called C-2023, which is expected to be visible in 2025. The Maya often connected serpents with the sky and stars, and the idea of a snake in the heavens during a blood moon would have added to their sense that something big was about to happen. Even more chilling, the wall ends with references to a dark sun and silent fields. These sound like descriptions of an environmental disaster. No sunlight, no crops, and no life. Whether meant as a prophecy, a memory of past suffering, or both, the message sounds surprisingly similar to today's concerns about climate change and ecological collapse.
So if they know so much about time, and they knew when to do things, was their disappearance from their cities really?
Why the Death Wall changes everything. The discovery and decoding of the Mayan Death Wall has shaken what we thought we knew about the ancient Maya. For years, scholars believed that the Mayas' detailed knowledge of astronomy developed during the later parts of their civilization. Books like the Dresden Codex, which is about 65% focused on astronomy, already showed that the Maya tracked eclipses, the movements of Venus, and the timing of solstices with amazing accuracy. But now, the Death Wall tells us that this advanced knowledge may have been around much earlier than anyone thought. The wall was created centuries before the Dresden Codex was written. Yet it describes a real lunar eclipse in 2020. This date isn't just a random number. It marks the end of a great cycle, a kind of cosmic reset that also appears in the Popol Vuh, the Maya's sacred creation story. The idea that such a date was already important in 100 BC changes the timeline for how we understand Maya religion and science. What's even more interesting is how the Maya seem to use this knowledge, not just to impress or to perform rituals, but to prepare. The Death Wall doesn't only predict a blood moon, it also speaks of drought and disaster. Knowing that the Maya suffered major collapses, especially around 900 AD due to severe water shortages, makes this feel like more than a myth. It's like the wall was a warning, a countdown to a future crisis. This changes how we see the Maya. They weren't just people performing strange sacrifices and worshipping the stars for fun. They were scientists and planners. They watched the skies to understand when danger was coming and how to prepare for it. At places like Uaxactun, where there's an ancient astronomical complex called an E group, the alignment of buildings allowed the Maya to track the sun's movement through the year. When you combine that with the Death Wall, you get a picture of a society that saw time as cyclical, not straight like we do. To them, every ending was a beginning. Death didn't mean destruction. It meant rebirth. And now, in 2025, as Guatemala prepares to witness the very eclipse the Maya predicted, their message hits home. The idea that an ancient civilization might have used the stars to understand climate patterns and prepare for collapse doesn't seem so strange anymore.
The next one in, the fifth, is a bakton, 20 periods of 20 years each, which is 144,000 days.
The cosmic clock. The Mayan Death Wall isn't just a painting, it's a map. Not a map of land or borders, but a map of time. A kind of cosmic clock, ticking with celestial events that the Maya believed were tied to life, death, and change here on Earth. What makes it even more amazing is that this clock is incredibly accurate, even by modern standards. Let's break it down. The Maya used a system called the long count calendar.
But the priestly class seemed to have made a new calendar called the long count. We're still not really sure why they created this calendar,
which tracks time over more than 5,000 years. One complete cycle lasts 5,125 years, and it recently reset in the year 2012. This reset led to many doomsday predictions, but for the Maya, it wasn't about the world ending. It was about renewal, an end of one cycle and the beginning of another. The Death Wall was created way back in 100 BC. That places it early in the current cycle. But somehow, the wall predicted a real event that wouldn't happen until thousands of years later, a total lunar eclipse in 2025. And not just generally, it matches NASA's modern eclipse data almost perfectly. That kind of accuracy is mind-blowing. How did the Maya do it?
It's a demonstration of power, a demonstration of spirituality, a demonstration of science.
Well, they were expert sky watchers. The Dresden Codex, one of the only surviving Maya books, contains tables tracking eclipses so accurately that they're correct within minutes. Scholars believe they observed lunar nodes, the points where the moon's path crosses the sun's path, and synodic periods, the moon's 29.5-day cycle from full moon, to predict these celestial events. There's more. The chamber where the Death Wall was found may have been an observatory, not just a ceremonial space. Researchers discovered that its layout lines up with zenithal sun passages, the 2 days each year when the sun passes directly overhead. In Guatemala, that happens around May 15th and July 29th. This means the temple was designed with the sky in mind. And then there's the mention of the serpent's coil in the glyphs. For the Maya, this might have seemed like a cosmic alignment, an eclipse and a blazing comet appearing together, signaling something important or even dangerous.
You would have stonemasons and obsidian merchants and basalt merchants and shell merchants, all types of products that would have been available for trade and exchange.
Echoes of collapse. The warnings carved into the Mayan Death Wall aren't just eerie. They feel strangely familiar. They speak of a great drought and silent fields, painting a picture of a land once full of life turning quiet and dry. And as it turns out, these aren't just stories or religious metaphors. They line up with real history, times when the Maya civilization actually collapsed. Around 900 AD, something big went wrong. Cities that had been thriving, like Tikal, once a powerful Maya capital, were suddenly abandoned. People stopped building monuments. Temples were left unfinished. What happened? Science has given us some answers. Studies of pollen and soil from Lake Chichancanab in the Yucatan show that rainfall dropped by about 50% between 800 and 1000 AD. That's a massive drought, and it hit the Maya hard. Crops failed, water sources dried up, and whole communities were forced to leave or perish. Now, with the Death Wall's message in hand, it seems the Maya may have seen these disasters coming, or at least believed they were part of a repeating cycle.
All it would take would be a short period of time in which there is no water in those cisterns, and those people would have to leave that hill.
They looked to the sky for signs, and they found patterns in things like eclipses and planetary movements. The wall's mention of a blood eclipse and the serpent's coil matches events happening again in 2025, including a total lunar eclipse that's part of a tetrad, 4 total lunar eclipses happening close together over 2 years. The Maya tracked similar eclipse groupings in the Dresden Codex, one of their ancient books filled with sky observations and predictions. To the Maya, these repeating sky events weren't just interesting, they were warnings. If an eclipse showed up during a certain season or near a certain constellation, it might signal a coming drought or shift in power. That's why they performed intense rituals, including bloodletting, and sometimes even human sacrifice. These acts were meant to reset the balance between heaven and earth. It may sound extreme today, but for them, it was a serious attempt to stop disaster before it happened. The Death Wall now feels like more than just a piece of art. It's a time capsule.
The king being this Havisham sitting among a ruined house as things slowly fell apart for him and his world collapsed. This is a very different kind of image for what was going on.
A message for today. The ancient Mayan Death Wall may have been buried for over 2,000 years, but the message it carries feels surprisingly timely. Once decoded, the wall's glyphs do more than tell a story from the past. They speak directly to us today. The Maya didn't think of time as something moving in a straight line. Instead, they believed it moved in cycles, rising, falling, repeating. They watched the stars, the moon, and the sun, and used these patterns to predict changes, not just in the sky, but also in the land and society. When their civilization began to struggle around 900 AD, it wasn't sudden. It was caused by drought, overpopulation, and resource shortages.
I'm finding a much greater diversity of plant food items that were consumed, ingredients in stews and soups, squash, beans, tree fruits, chili peppers.
Problems that sound a lot like what we're dealing with now. Climate change, water crises, and growing tension around the world. The upcoming 2025 eclipse, predicted so accurately on the wall, feels less like a coincidence and more like a reminder. Recent digs at places like San Bartolo and El Zotz, along with LiDAR scans that uncovered over 1,000 Maya settlements, show that this was a civilization deeply connected to the earth and sky. The phrase, turning of the bones, may not only describe an ancient ritual, it might also mean transformation, a time to change, to prepare, to survive. As we face our own silent fields in the form of wildfires, droughts, and food insecurity, maybe this ancient message is more than history. It's a call to action.